one of the moves that opponents to the law should not make is the law was given to Israel and not to the church. And the reason why is because this is a dead end. You will get submitted for this because it doesn't work.
Then you have no sin. Then you have there's no knowledge of sin in your life. Paul says, and sin is, if Jesus is like your top guy, and sin is not part of your guy. And sin is if Jesus is your top guy and sin is not part of your like crucial vocabulary. I don't mean like it's a word I mean like it's part of your active vocabulary and you have a biblical conception of sin and you're trying to say the Torah of Moses doesn't apply to you, then that's a strange world to try to live in. I don't know how. Well,
here's the thing. Okay, now I'll give this Sunday school teacher a little bit of grace in that he at least attempts to move. He pivots from this to the idea that Israel was given the law, but the church is given the law of Christ. Now, here's the thing. Remember, I was just talking about how I listened to Psalm 119 as I'm going to bed, and I'm sitting there going, yes, I know exactly what he's talking about, right? Well, the law of Christ is not a thing. You have to go and decide what the law of Christ is. In the apostolic, in the New Testament, you have to go and say, okay, well, is this for the Jews? He talks about the Sabbath, right? He says, pray that your flight is not on the Sabbath. Well, why would he do that if the Sabbath is not for the Gentiles? Well, he must be talking to Israel and not the Gentiles, right? That they pray that their flight not be on the Sabbath. So, okay, so then we have to now, all of a sudden, we're having to pick and choose between Christ's words. What about Matthew 5:17 and following? Well, that must be for Israel, right? Before the death of Christ.
Right.
So that's not part of the law of Christ. So now we get to pick and choose. What is part of the law of Christ? Here's the thing. In my theology, the law of Christ is the law of Moses. That is the law of Christ. Simple. If I want to know what the law of Christ says, I go and I look in the law. Open
it's
Deuteronomy
the Torah
and start
of Moses,
yeah, exactly.
Taught and explained and lived and accurately shown to be what it is by Yeshua. He's in Romans. What is it? Romans 10:4. That Messiah is the telos of the Torah. It means if you're reading the Torah and you don't know who Messiah is, you're going to come up with man-made readings, and some things will be, it's like settling for a blurry picture. But if you read the Torah and you know who Yeshua is, then that's like looking at the photograph that's really clear and sharp.
Right. Hang on just one second.
Because when you're looking at a blurry image, sometimes you don't know how to interpret things. You're like, I don't know, is that a tree stump or is that a grizzly bear charging me? Right? And you don't know.
So Patricia asked this question, what's the name of the book your dad is writing regarding the Celts keeping the Sabbath? My dad isn't writing it. He is reading a book. So it's a book that was already written by a different person. I'll have to find the name of it and I'll mention it on the next show. So, I wrote a paper one time. It was a pretty awful paper, actually, and I think that's why I took it down. I thought it was trash, and so I didn't keep it up. I think we had it on. I think we might have had it on TorahResource for a minute, and then I was like, "This is really bad." Anyway, I try to argue in that book that since God says no one can see me and live, right? Moses says, "I want to see your glory," and he says, "Nobody can see me and live." And then he puts him in the cleft of the rock. He passes by. Everybody knows the story, right? But then what happens in Exodus 33? It says. And Moses would go into the tent, and he would speak with God, with Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, face to face, as a friend speaks with a friend. And so I argued that this was a pre-incarnate Yeshua, because he is speaking to him, because he sees him as a friend speaks with a friend. Okay, so this is my argument. Now, I honestly believe that, but I don't think that the evidence that I produced was necessarily great. I think there was better ways to write that article. Anyway, not the point. All of this to say, I believe that Yeshua is the one who gives the Torah to Moses. The covenant that is made, and we can, so there's so many avenues that we can go down here to talk about Israel and the Gentile people. First of all, there is the fact that the Gentiles are always coming into the covenant people of God. Okay, now, it needs to be stated at the outset of this conversation. We're already 25 minutes in, by the way, but it needs to be stated at the outset of this conversation that, number one, I do not believe that the believers in Christ replace Israel. That is not what I am trying to say. The church does not replace Israel. This is replacement theology. Replacement theology is wrong. Thank you so much for watching this video. Tell us your thoughts on this subject by leaving a comment in the comment section. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and enable those notifications. And we'll see you in the next video.